right, everyone. This week we are wrapping up the semester talking about the somatic and autonomic divisions of the nervous system. And we are going to start off with chapter 13, which is the somatic division. So this is going to be somatic senses and then their integration and motor responses, all part of that somatic division. All right, so really quickly, just kind of a couple main points about our somatic nervous system. It is responsible for two main things. First is conscious perception of our environment. So this is going to be things we see, hear, taste, touch, and a bunch of other things that you may not think of. We'll get into some detail as we go. So this is going to include all of the sensory receptors from the skin, skeletal muscles, joints, and all of our special senses. So special senses, we're going to get into quite a bit of detail about those. This is sight, hearing, taste, and a few others. And these are all considered to be what's called afferent receptors. So afferent things are going from outside the external part of the body into the central nervous system. All right. So they are going back into that central nervous system. On the other side is our voluntary or conscious motor responses. So movement of muscles, sometimes glands like sweat glands, and these are all going to be efferent receptors or nerves that are going from the central nervous system. They're carrying those signals from the central nervous system out to those receptors that are connected to skeletal muscles or glands. All right, so we are going to start off with section 2, covering touch, taste, and smell. So sensory receptors can be classified a few different ways, as you can see here. We have a couple different varieties of structural classification. So this can be based on the type of cell, so kind of their structure. We'll see a graphic of this in just a little bit. And then we can also have this classification based on where they are found in the body. All right, so exteroreceptors are going to be things sensing the external environment. Interoceptors are going to be sensing our internal environment. And then proprioceptors are really cool. Proprioception is the ability of our body being able to tell where it is in 3D space. So I think I've talked about this before last week. But this is what enables you to do things like close your eyes and you can still very accurately touch the very tip of your nose. You can touch a specific part of your ear. If you've got your ears pierced, you can touch a specific piercing with your eyes closed. You can bend down and touch your knee with your eyes closed. And this is because we have receptors telling our body where we are in space and in relation to other parts of our body so that we can detect and touch those areas without needing to see them. And then our third classification is functional. So this is a receptor based on what type of stimuli it's picking up. So a chemoreceptor would pick up chemical signals. Osmoreceptor is going to sense water balance. Mechanoreceptors are sensing movement, so on and so forth. So we're going to see some examples of these different types of sensory receptors as we go through this chapter. So here are the graphics of the receptor classification by type of cell. So up here in A, we've got a receptor neuron with free nerve endings. So those dendrites are free to pick up signals from other cells. Cell body is here in the middle, so this is a bipolar cell that we're seeing here. This middle one, B, this is a receptor neuron with an encapsulated nerve ending. So there's the dendrites, and they are covered with some connective tissue, so there's specific areas where we're going to see those. And then we have in C, very, very specialized receptor cells, which as you can see look very, very different. So this specialized receptor cell that they're using to demonstrate this is a rod that would be found on the retina of our eye. So this is going to be one of those photoreceptors to help pick up light. All right, so let's talk about somatosensation. So this is touch. Touch is a general sense, not a special sense. We only have a few special senses. Everything else is considered to be a general sense. So the sense of touch is going to include a lot of different things. So pressure, vibration, light touch, itching, pain, again, proprioception. All of these are going to be different touch sensations. So these receptors are spread all throughout our body in a wide variety of organs. Our skin is probably the first thing that you would think of for the sense of touch. That's understandable, but these receptors are also going to be found in our muscles, especially for those deeper pressures, as well as kinesthesia. So this has to do with movement. Proprioception is also going to play a role with those muscles, tendons, joint capsules, ligaments, all that kind of stuff. And then the walls of visceral organs, so some of our organs within our body, are also going to have these types of receptors. So certain things like itching or pain, proprioception again, is all going to play a role here. So some of these receptors are going to be mechanoreceptors, so sensing some sort of movement, or sometimes we call this mechanical deformation or deformation. So this would be like really, really deep pressure. If you're pressing into your skin, that's going to be sensed on your skin, as well as the muscles and some of the connective tissues deeper down under the skin. So we can have mechanoreceptors with free nerve endings found in the dermis, cornea, tongue, joint capsules, visceral organs that can sense pain, temperature, and again, that mechanical deformation. So this is a change in the normal structure of that area. Merkel's discs, these are special mechanoreceptors found in the junction between the epidermis and dermis of our skin, as well as mucous membranes, mucosal membranes. These can sense low frequency vibrations, so this is going to be things that could come across as the sensation of light touch in some cases. So this is a really specialized cell type. Then we have bulbous or ruffian's corpuscles. These are also found in the dermis and joint capsules. These sense stretch. All right, so this is obviously going to be really, really important for joints to be able to sense how much they're being stretched, but it's also important for our skin. Tactile corpuscles or Meissner corpuscles. These are found in the papillary layer of the dermis, especially in our fingertips and lips. These sense light touch and then some other vibrations, some lower frequency vibrations. Lamellated or Pacinin corpuscles. These are found deeper in the dermis and subcutaneous tissue. These are going to sense much deeper pressure and some high frequency vibrations. Our hair follicle plexus, these are special receptors wrapped around the hair follicles in the dermis. This will sense movement of hair. So this is why sometimes you can feel things that aren't fully touching your skin yet, but generally you can tell if something has touched your hair. If you brush, you're walking down the hiking trail or something and your hair brushes against a branch or something, but it doesn't actually touch your skin, but you can still tell that you brushed up against something. We've got muscle spindles lined up with those skeletal muscle fibers to sense their contraction and stretch. And then we have certain receptors that are tendon stretch organs or Golgi tendon organs that are obviously going to be found lined up with tendons, sensing the stretch of those tendons. Our next sense that we're going to cover is gustation or taste. This is one of our 5 special senses. This involves some raised bumps called papillae or papilla for singular if you're just talking about one of them. These are found on the tongue, and these are containing all of the structures we need for taste. The sense of taste is gustatory transduction, so picking up the chemical signals from the foods that we eat and translating that into information about what we're tasting. We have four main types of papilla based on their appearance: circumvallate, folate, filiform, and fungiform. And so these are all going to have slightly different roles. And then within those papilla are the taste buds that contain very, very specialized gustatory receptor cells for that chemical stimuli, giving us that sense of taste. All right, so here's the tongue. So kind of looking at deeper examples of what all of these different papilla look like. So here's the circumvallate papilla shown right here, and you can see that this is going to be kind of found on the edges of the tongue. We've got taste buds embedded within that. Right, and that's what that looks like if we were to take a cross section of that tissue and stain it. Here we have the fungiform papilla right there, along with, again, taste buds deeper down. Filiform papilla, as you can see, these are almost shaped kind of like a flame. All right, and they're found close to the tip of the tongue, as you can see. Again, taste buds down there, and then these foliate papilla found on the edges as well, again with taste buds deep down in there. So this is a zoomed in view of any of these papilla, but just kind of looking a bit more at that internal structure. So there are little hair-like structures up here, and then some pores to pick up more of that chemical signal. And that is all going to get moved further down. So we've got some gustatory cells in here, and then basal cells, which are going to help with some of that sensation. And then transitional cells are going to help with that kind of communication from what is that chemical and what type of taste sensation is that chemical giving us. All right, next up is the olfaction sense, or the sense of smell. This is the second of our 5 special senses. So we have olfactory receptor neurons. These are going to be unipolar neurons located in the olfactory epithelium of our nasal cavity. These are also responding to chemical stimuli. This would be called odorants, rather than that sense of taste that we just saw. These cells have the dendrites extending out from the surface of the epithelium into that mucus lining of the cavity. So these are going to have receptors for those chemicals that are going to give us that smell. And then the axons extend through the cribriform plate, through those cribriform foramina of the ethmoid bone, if you remember that from our second unit. Those axons are going to extend up through that cribriform plate of that ethmoid bone to reach the olfactory bulb, which will then go through that olfactory tract back into the brain. But these axons are what form the olfactory nerves. Whoops, sorry. So once the olfactory nerve crosses into the central nervous system, at that base of the brain, it becomes the olfactory tract and sends those axons to several different brain regions. So most special senses have one area of the brain that they're getting processed in, and it's going to have to pass through the thalamus. But olfaction does not do that. It's not passing through the thalamus like the other special senses do. It just goes directly to some different brain regions for processing. So here is that nasal cavity. We're going to have those dendrites embedded in the mucous membranes here inside of that nasal cavity, and then the axons again going up through that cribriform plate, through that ethmoid bone, forming the olfactory nerve. That's going to go into the olfactory bulb, and then all of that information gets sent back through the olfactory tract to the various areas of the brain that it needs to go to. All right, so this is what that looks like deeper as we're kind of looking at roughly a zoomed in view of this right here. is what that's showing. So here's the olfactory tract. So this would be the bulb up here, ethmoid bone shown right here with all of those nerves coming through, all of those different axons. This would be connective tissue. Here's an olfactory gland to help with some of those mucus secretions. And then this would be that actual epithelial layer with mucus on it, which is containing all of those dendrites. And we are going to wrap up this video here, and we will continue in the next video talking about some more senses, hearing, balance, and vision.